When an autoimmune diagnosis forced hard choices, Leanne and Jesse chose a new path and a new company. With Whims, they turned a low-sugar, plant-based lifestyle into crave-worthy chocolates that are kinder to your body and actually taste incredible. Whims Delight began as stemmed from a health challenge and a shared mission between the two of you. I'm curious, from that get-go, did you anticipate that it was going to become a brand?
I don't think it initially materialized for me that it was going to be a brand until much later. It was really just, grounded in the mission of reducing sugar in all the things that we consume. So that was always just the driving force. And then at some point, I was just like, oh, when we had our pouches on our first shelf, I'm like, this is actually happening, I don't know if you had a different experience. Was it always like a brand?
I think at the time I had been searching for something different to do. And I hit this point in the midlife where I had been doing something for like 20 years. And I sat with the question, if I could do anything for the second half of my career, would I keep doing what I'm doing? And the answer inevitably was no. And then I had the discomfort of now, if I didn't do this, what would I do? And having worked in and alongside a bunch of different consumer companies, I was like, man, it'd be so cool to start a brand, to launch a brand. And so the sort of serendipity of that moment in my life and my career journey and Leanne's health journey, and this insight we had that nobody had really taken on doing with confectionery, what so many other categories had done, which was really recreate nostalgic brands in a better for you format. And so those two things came together and it just became obvious.
So cool. So cool. I mean, it's almost like built out of necessity, but something that maybe came along at the right time as well for you, Jesse.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. So take me back to the health issues that you encountered, Leanne, and how that came about.
I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. I woke up one day, I was losing my hair, which is not typical. My family all has like full heads of hair and my scalp was burning. It just was so much pain. And we were living in Canada at that time. So it was really hard to find a specialist. When I was diagnosed with this autoimmune, it's like this rare form of alopecia. So it causes scarring. It's quite painful. The doctors gave me this diagnosis and they were like, hey, you're going to have to manage this with a lifetime of medication. And no joke, they were like, but also this medication, there's like 50-50 chance that you're going to lose your eyesight. And I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? This has got to be a joke, right? And so of course that's not a choice you want to be making. Do you want to lose your hair? Which you kind of, as a woman, you identify so closely with your looks and your hair, or do you want to lose your eyesight? So, Jesse and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, okay, none of those choices seem like a great idea. We started doing our own research, really looked at, hey, what are some foods that causes inflammation in the body? We really nerded out on it. Like we went deep and we just found that there were things that we could cut out and just like, let's see what happens. So we cut out gluten, sugar being a big one, gluten and dairy. And literally, I'm not joking, like in a few months, my symptoms went away. Like the pain is gone, the burning is gone. Yes, I'm probably never going to grow my hair back the way it was, but that was like a big milestone for us. And so that was kind of like this moment where that health piece and food and what we were consuming kind of connected. And we're like, wait, why aren't more people talking about this? And why are we being thrown medication all the time when there's a different journey that we could be going through that could have far better outcomes, And that was really, part of the journey of Whims is, yes, we love chocolates. We are obsessed about chocolates. We dig into our kids' Halloween bags all the time. And so we were like, we want to create these chocolates that we know and love into a format that we can actually consume now in this version of our lives.
Was this part of the conversation, like this health conversation in your home before? Were you conscious of what you were putting in your body and that sort of thing? Or was this kind of like the catalyst that made you realize, okay, we need to take this more seriously?
For me, definitely not. I was that kid that ate ice cream for breakfast. Like my favorite go-to was like vanilla ice cream, melted just a little bit with Kellogg's cornflakes.
Nice.
First of all, incredible. And I would eat that. I'm like a big treats person. I want to indulge. I try sweets all the time. Jesse knows this. Like I'm constantly craving it. So I didn't have that mindfulness in terms of what am I actually consuming? What am I putting in my body? I didn't even have a thought. When you're younger, you're not really thinking about that. You feel like you're invincible, right?
Yeah, I think as you start to get older, the body is far less forgiving in terms of what you eat. Even alcohol, Leanne never really drank, but I ended up cutting out alcohol in my mid-30s just because I just didn't feel good. And so I think I don't know that we were as intentional, but certainly became, as we got older, heading toward our 40s, we definitely became aware more about the impact of food on our health and how we felt and functioned. So it was an undertone, but this really brought it to the forefront for us.
And after this experience that you've both had, obviously, with whatever you cut out and started intaking more of and that sort of thing, and you've seen the positive effect that it's had. Why, in your opinions, why is it that this isn't a more commonly discussed topic?
It's interesting. There's a new, I think, a movement to make America healthy again. And there's definitely a groundswell. I mean, almost half of America is diabetic or pre-diabetic. So I think, it's probably a deep rabbit hole to go into about the food system and how sort of the industrialization of the food system pushed the entire industry towards optimization. So that's cheaper ingredients. Even in our category, you see photos of the original Snickers bar and it looked, and I'm sure tasted, and I'm sure the ingredients were very different than the modern version. And so I think with the industrialization and scale of the food industry and the fact that it became about efficiencies within the supply chain, everything worsened and it led to making everybody sick, which is probably a perfect balance for the healthcare system, which is really a sick care system, which has a fix and focuses on fixing diseases when they occur as opposed to preventing people from getting sick in the first place.
What kind of challenges did that pose when you're starting to develop your product? Taking into account, cost of goods is obviously significantly higher. Mm-hmm. Let's start there.
That probably shows up through our whole journey in terms of just, shelf space, the whole value chain from starting from manufacturing products to getting them into the hands of consumers is really optimized for the largest food companies in the world. So there's 10 companies really who own the majority of the brands on shelf at supermarkets. And so day one, and I don't think we got this, but day one, you're competing with some of the largest companies in the US. Day one. So, a lot of people think about emerging brands competing against other similar emerging brands. You're not. Day one, you're competing against Mars, Mondelez, the giants, because ultimately you don't own your route to the consumer on shelf. The retailers do. And those shelves are fixed in terms of the space that they have to feature products. So what's cool about the moment we're in, I think, which has happened probably in the last 10 years or so, is that the retailers are recognizing and there's building demand for the newer emerging brands, for the better for you products. And so slowly but surely, we're getting shelf space. Having said that, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with one of the largest retailers in the US and learned that the entire candy category, 75% of it's conventional. So only 25% of the shelf at one of the largest retailers in the US is for emerging brands. And so, if you think of it on that scale, you're still competing with shelf space amongst the largest food, and they've got 75% of that shelf space and that's just in the candy category. And those same companies have products throughout the store. So some of the largest, in our particular circumstance, some of the largest confectionery brands have huge pet brands. And so if you think of the retailer representing these large brands on shelf, they're doing it in every category. Right? There's been so much consolidation in food that these large conglomerates own brands in every single category. And so from a retailer's point of view, that vendor is a really big vendor and carries a lot of weight and spends a lot of money with that retailer. So there's a lot stacked up against you in terms of just getting your product into the hands of consumer.
Yeah. And even like when you think about, when we talk to buyers as we pitch them, we talk about kind of like our value proposition, like this is what we're all about. This is what we're trying to get at. And even though we know that consumers are now looking for that better for you product, and like they're becoming even more savvy, when they're purchasing, like what's in the ingredients, what does this label look like, why is it better for me? Sometimes it's like there's this conversation that happens in these meetings where it's not necessarily about those attributes only. It's about everything Jesse talked. It's the ecosystem. How much are we on shelf? Like we cannot compete with sugar. Sugar is a cheap ingredient. A lot of the components of our chocolate we make from scratch, so we don't cut any corners. And so for that reason, it's like really hard to compete with conventional candy that's just full of junk and cheap ingredients. Also, it's like having the budgets to kind of like be on shelf. That's also something that as an emerging brand, it is a struggle when you're competing with larger, more established brands. And I know that plays a part in the decision making to some extent, like what are ways that a retailer can make the most out of this space? And that makes sense. It totally makes sense. But I think those are decisions that behind the scenes kind of play a role in how easy it is or difficult it is to get on shelf and to get in front of more consumers. It can be a tough journey.
It almost sounds like you have to double sell, right? Like you're selling not only to the end consumer, or marketing rather, not only to the end consumer, but also to the potential buyers or the stalkers or whatever the case may be in these industries. Retailers. Do you find that there's been any sort of like, what's the biggest selling point, I suppose, for your brand to get onto these shelves and get into the consumers? Is it the story? Is it the why? Or is it the health benefits? Or is there any sort of like synergies?
I think the answer is it depends. When we think about our layers of distribution, the specialty independent stores put a lot of value in the story, the product, the look and feel, the innovation. I think the further you get up the food chain in terms of size and sophistication of retailer, they operate from different metrics, right? Obviously, Whole Foods was acquired by Amazon. And so you can imagine that the way that Amazon manages their business, and now having that trickle down into Whole Foods, data, metrics become a bigger filter for how they make decisions about which products come on shelf. And so I think that, it really depends on the particular retailer and their philosophy around innovation and how much work, time, and attention the retailer is going to dedicate to really figuring out an innovation set within their large enterprise. It's a lot of work for them also.
What can individuals, maybe from a consumer perspective and also other CPG brands, or what have you noticed, like trends or that sort of thing, to push this narrative forward and ensure that we're not just kind of purely looking at a data-driven approach? Is it innovation in the retailer, on the retailer side, but what can other everyday people do?
I think everybody in the value chain plays a role. How consumers think about spending their money plays a role. How much thought consumers have when they're, we think about it like there's sort of two different shopping moments people have. One is a discovery moment where shoppers are intentional about discovery. And the other is the busy mom with her two kids in the shopping cart who's doing a replenishment shop for the week, who goes into the store with a list. 80% of the groceries that she's buying, she bought last week, she bought the week before. So there's sort of different shopper experiences, intentionalities. And then you map that back onto the types of stores. Some stores, like here in Austin, there's an amazing chain called Central Market, which the buyers, all they do is curate products for their stores. So most of what they have on shelf, you won't find in other retailers, conventional retailers or natural retailers. They really do a good job of curating every category with very interesting products from all over the world. And so a shopper going into a central market will have an expectation and intent to discover, versus a shopper going into a larger, maybe national chain, more a conventional chain. They're just there for the national brands that they grew up eating, they buy for their family today. And so I think it's sort of different shopper experiences in that journey. And then I think as emerging brands, we're all learning how to, whatever data we do have and generate, whether it's direct to consumer data, whether it's even in the early days, you're like managing reorders from your independent stores. How often are they ordering, and sort of contemplating a velocity metric that way. So whatever stage you're at, there's some data story to tell. And I think it's your job to learn how to leverage data to play the game that ultimately matters as you start to move up the chain in terms of retail sophistication.
When you started the brand, obviously there's a deep mission. There's a deep mission there, right? Which is to make a healthy snack that is approachable for everybody, and to obviously tastes great, but doesn't have the negative effects that a Snickers would, as an example. When you're designing something like this, obviously, it would be natural to envision yourself, Leanne, as the ICP, right? The person that's going to be purchasing this product.
Yes.
I'm curious if there were any surprises about who ended up buying the product that maybe you couldn't have foreseen.
Yes, and we actually just had this conversation. So we actually created this target consumer that we call her Revel, between the ages of 28 and 35, and we thought this was the person who was in the boutique gyms, hanging out at the cool cafes. You find them on social media, TikTok. They always know the wellness trends. They go do yoga. They're very fit and very mindful of what they put in their body. And to some extent, it was like the aspirational version of me when I was younger. It was like, man, if I was younger, if I could go back in time, I wish I would have done this to better take care of my body. And the surprise there was, it actually, and it shouldn't have been a surprise, this is the thing, is the target consumer that emerged was actually more of a version of me, and we named her Sage. But it's really, women who are, it's very women focused and leans towards women. And there's a lot of them are mothers going through their own health journeys, really struggling, but want to be better, going through some form of wellness journey themselves and discovering, like, what do I want to sacrifice or substitute or, put as an alternate in my life to create that wellness journey for myself. So one of the things that's important there is we're not willing to sacrifice on taste. It doesn't matter how healthy it is. It's like, I'm not going to repeat purchase something that, even though it might be better for me, if it doesn't taste good, I'm probably not going to have it. But I don't want it to sacrifice my tomorrow, right? Like, I don't want to hurt tomorrow because of it. So that was an interesting surprise for us, because when we first started this, we had this vision of what we thought the consumer would be or who would be interested in our product. And it was completely different. And we've even discovered people in different communities, people, yes, the autoimmune community. We don't kind of like market this to the diabetic community, but a huge community has emerged around there who, they've come out and they said, hey, this product has been great for us. So it's been interesting seeing the different sub communities that have come through that really enjoy the product. That should have been obvious, but wasn't.
Well, it's interesting, right? You never really know. I think that's a commonality between any founder, and whether the product or service doesn't matter. But I don't know that anybody has gotten their ICP perfect the first time.
No.
When we think about the changes, that you've made since the get-go. So how long has it been since your MVP?
2.5 years in market now.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we first started with the oat milk chocolate peanut butter cups only, just one product.
Okay. And how many now?
There's 4.
4.
Yeah.
Did you plan on always having multiple products from the get-go, or was it something that kind of emerged over time?
Yeah, you sort of need a brand block to be on shelf in retail. Very early on, people were like, one SKU, can't just bring in one SKU. We always had a vision for some other flavors and quickly learned that in order to be a real brand on shelf, you need a brand block, you need multiple SKUs. So it was 3, the peanut butter cup, our caramel cookie bar, and peanut nougat bar were our 3 SKUs. And then people were really vocal when we'd meet them out in the community at demos and tastings and events that you got to make a dark chocolate version, which we resisted for a long time, wanting to stay true to these like confectionery roots. And ultimately we were like, okay, we got to do dark chocolate, and launched it, and it's been a hit. We've not been able to keep it in stock.
Yeah. We should have listened sooner.
Yeah.
On that note, so on consumer listening, I mean, that's a huge thing that I think people, it's a common mistake we see in the founder community, is that, you know, they have this idea that something's going to work for whatever reason, then maybe their own biases or whatever, and they forget to listen. Do you have, obviously you learned from that experience, but do you have a method of which that you keep your ear on the ground with consumers?
I don't think we've created a structure around it that I would say is a playbook. We've kind of done it very organically, which is kind of how we've grown our brand. So a lot of it is when we're out in the community doing demos. We do a lot of demos. We ask a lot of questions. If people are on TikTok or email us, you know, I'm always like, which one's your favorite? Why? What would you like to see? So it's just like very organic. There is no like, we do surveys, we get this info from D2C, you know, whatever it is, tracking bots, none of that. It's really just organically within our community, asking people what they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as a founder, you have to have a vision for the future that I think it was Henry Ford said, if we asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So, you know, I think you have to balance having a vision for the future and also engaging really early to get feedback on whether you got it right.
And what is that metric for you for getting it right?
Taste. Like that for me is everything, you know. Like I said, I'm not going to be that person who's going to purchase something again if it doesn't taste great. And so, you know, Jesse knows I'm always hammering the team about, okay, I tasted this, like I really want to change that, or can we try a different flavor, or I know that the texture is already here, but can we there's something off, you know, like taste is everything, especially when you're a better for you brand. It's like you're already seen as that better for you. So to some people, it feels like you have to sacrifice something because you're doing better for you. And we want to be that brand where we're not even competing in the better for you space. We're just confectionery, and it becomes the future of the candy aisle versus like a niche, you know, like we're in that 25%. So I think taste is everything, because that's what's going to get consumers to come back and to realize like, hey, actually, we don't need all that sugar in our products in order to indulge and enjoy.
I love that focus on taste, obviously, because everybody wants a great tasting product.
Yeah.
But I think like there's this interesting, you know, I guess experience that most people have had, that they purchase a product that is, you know, healthier for you because they're trying to do better for their bodies or whatever the case may be. And then they try this product for the first time and they've spent a couple extra dollars on it or whatever the case. And the product sucks. And they're like, you know, they've basically been burned by this better for you, to use your words. I guess, is there a lot of, I can imagine why, demos work really well for you, because you actually get these individuals to try the product and then they're like, okay, I'm sold, hands down. But what kind of education goes into, you know, ensuring that the customer, you know, when you're standing across from the customer and they've tried the product for the first time and they're like, wow, this is incredible. What is the difference? What is the role of education in selling your product?
Yeah, it's interesting, because if the taste didn't work, whatever you have to deliver after that doesn't matter. So, you know, you really have that moment where the consumer tries your product and they decide right away if they like it or not. And so there may be some curiosity around, how did you do this? Like, how does this only have 1 gram of sugar, is a question we get asked so often. And we've got an incredible head of product, Leslie, who's a classically trained French pastry chef who also happened to work in food manufacturing, who we met randomly at the park. And
at our daughter's school.
Randomly at the park.
Very, very random meeting.
You have to tell the story.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
You can't just step over it.
Okay.
Okay, go.
Yeah, we had these first versions of the peanut butter cup that we made that were very healthy, and they tasted gross. I went to go pick up our daughter from school one day, and it was like an after-school picnic. All the parents were hanging out, and Leanne is like, "Go home, get those peanut butter cups. We'll hand them out." We had 300, so I didn't know what we're going to do with them, and so
it's only so much you can eat, at home.
Yeah, so I was nervous to do that because I knew they weren't great, but we did it, and we started handing them out to parents. And one woman told us, like, "Wait here," and disappeared in the crowd. Pulled this woman in front of us and was like, "Give her one." And so I handed this woman a peanut butter cup, and she took a bite, and she like smacked her lips. She was looking around for a few minutes and finally delivered a really detailed analysis of what was wrong with the product. And I was like, "Who are you? Like, how do you know that?" She's super humble. She didn't tell me much, but I got her number. We went for coffee the next day, and we hired her the next day. And she's been our head of product since, and has really formulated all of our components from scratch, and then has trained our manufacturing partners how to do it at scale. And so I think she's innovated more in confectionery in the last 3 years with us than anybody has in our space. And she's just done a great job of, when you remove the sugar, you have to create a different experience with the ingredients and the components to deliver a balanced product where you're not overwhelmed. Like now if I eat a conventional candy bar, I'm like, all I really experience is sugar and different textures. And so if you pull out all that sweetness and sugar, now you have to deliver a different eating experience. And so she talks a lot about balance, how the different ingredients work together. Our peanut filling, we must have had 30 different versions of that peanut filling, to where eventually there were 2 we couldn't decide between. And she was like, "We'll just combine them." And so we did. And it was like, oh my God, that's the perfect solution for that peanut filling. So each ingredient each component in our product went through that same journey. And there's still some today we're working through. Like every time we do a production, we are tweaking our recipe. Leslie's got a very high standard for taste and experience. Her husband's a chef also, so she's always working in the kitchen on products, and then eventually takes those that new process or new ingredients and drives them through our manufacturers. And so we're always iterating to get to that stage where we feel like we're there. 2 of our products we feel that way about, and 2 of them we continue to iterate on. And going from your home kitchen into a commercial environment, trying to match up the way ingredients behave, work together, from what you can do on a benchtop in your kitchen to what happens at scale is very challenging. So we're so lucky. We wouldn't be here without Leslie.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Awesome.
Like there's moments where we'll pick up on a flavor and we just don't know what's going on. You're like, there's this hint of whatever it is, something. And she'll be like, "I know. Yep. I know. I think it's in this component, and it's because I did this and I baked it this way." And you're just like, it doesn't matter what you hit her with. Like, "Hey, I want to create X, Y, and Z product." She's like, okay. She'll have a roadmap for it, and she's incredible. We can't take any of the credit. We just eat.
But I mean, the credit is that what tastes great, right?
Yes.
Back to your first point.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a point where you didn't like one of her creations?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity? Yeah.
Absolutely. And she's great with the feedback, and we'll let her know. I mean, there's still, Jesse said there's 2 of the 4 that, they're favorites for certain people, but for us, it's not quite at the level that we would like it to be. There's something about the other 2 where it's our peanut butter cups. It's like, it's got this, I call it a roller coaster of taste, right? Like you kind of have these textures, and then you feel this smoothie creaminess, and then it ends with this salty finish, and you're like, oh, that was so good. And I think that we're always striving for that experience in the moments that we have with our products. So there have been times where
and yet as picky as we are, like one of those 2 is our second bestseller.
I know, I'm so picky about it.
And we're so clear about the path to improvement. It's just a continuous improvement journey with food, always.
Yeah.
The correct me if I'm wrong. I don't work in the space, but the prices of cocoa and ingredients in general, but cocoa specifically, has gone up significantly over the past couple of years. How do you manage, sourcing products where the prices fluctuate so drastically and that directly, influences your margins?
Yeah, so since we launched, cocoa's gone up 400%. So that was an unexpected surprise. Mm-hmm. But I think that your job in food is to continue to create efficiencies and simplify processes, and every single input cost every year goes up. And it's virtually impossible to pass that along to a consumer every time it does. So, lucky for us, we've continued to find efficiencies in our supply chain, and that's a big focus for us, obviously. So even with cocoa prices going up 400% since we launched, we've managed margin improvement quarter over quarter since we've launched. And, there's certainly a target in our business for gross margin, because ultimately part of that gross margin goes into spend with your retail partners. And when you see products on sale at stores, that's because part of what the brand is earning in gross margin, they're putting back into the value chain to discount products. So, having a target gross margin isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And then ultimately from that comes your contribution margin, which you have to use to operate the business. So you have margin targets that you just have to hit, and you've got to figure out how within your supply chain you can accomplish that. And it's a make or break, life or death scenario. There was certainly a moment in consumer where it didn't matter, when capital was flowing into consumer brands a lot more freely than it is today. And lots of companies didn't figure that out in the early sort of 2020s. And then the market changed, and suddenly it became important that you had a healthy gross margin to support the marketing of your product to consumers, and then ultimately to run your business.
What changed? What changed between the early 2020s and now, in the sense that the capital isn't flowing as freely?
Interest rates. Yeah, interest rates. Money became expensive again.
I know you are doing a raise right now.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting to read about that. You have a proven model, like you said. Your margins have been increasing year over year, but investors are still saying too soon. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to? What do you think is the problem here?
Let's be real about it. As an asset class, consumer packaged goods companies is probably amongst the riskier classes of investments. And people who've been deploying capital into consumer over a 10-year horizon went through a window where it became increasingly competitive to get into deals. I mean, any sort of VC competes to get into deals. And competition increased to get into deals in 2020, 2021, like sort of that COVID moment where cash was so free, everybody looked at consumer as the next sort of beachhead, similar to what is happening now in AI. Everybody, saw incredible growth potential in consumer. And there were brands growing like crazy online, direct-to-consumer as a channel exploded post-COVID. And so it became really competitive. So, if you think on a 10-year look back on consumer investing in what has always traditionally been a really high-risk asset class, there was so much exuberance and so much capital flowing into it that, I'm imagining that a lot of those funds are upside down in those investments, which I think is a part of venture capital anyways, but probably they went through a really bad period. And so the lens changed on how to think about consumer. I think I just read 64% of every VC dollar today goes into AI. So, as pendulums swing or lenses change in terms of sectors, and so there's just less people generally looking at investing in consumer. So that tightens things up. And then, the filter for what good looks like changes and evolves also. And so, I think on our side of the table, I don't know if this would be fair on the other side of the table for VCs, but everybody wants to be in the hottest, fastest growing brands and categories. And so if you think of the moment we're in today, protein's having a moment. So it seems everything protein is getting funded, and there's a huge huge growth in protein products. And so protein's now showing up in everything. I just saw a shout out to a company that's about to launch called Man Cereal that has protein and creatine. I mean, so in a cereal. I don't know how it's going to taste, but like, so that'll capture consumer trend. THC beverages are exploding. So there are certain categories that just catch fire and probably attract an outsized amount of investment capital. We're in a category where we've had, in the last 9 years, there have been 3 exits in confectionery. It was Lily's, Justin's, and Hue Chocolate. So we feel like there's a good wake in our category. There hasn't been much in the way of new brands that are really doing traditional confectionery. And we really focused in the early days on hitting all those early proof points, velocity, metrics. But we built in a really slow, relatively speaking, and intentional way that focused on the fundamentals. Like, at the end of the day, we're building a real business and have to be responsible for our success, and didn't want to build an enterprise that was burning cash to grow top line. And so, you've got to fit a model that demonstrates a venture level outcome. And it could be that the way in which we're building, which are really, which is slower, we're growing slower than some of our contemporaries in other categories. And so, the challenge always is really lining up philosophy of how we're building. Sometimes people get really excited about how we're building and invest, like you're doing it right. And then other times, maybe they don't see a path to a venture level outcome, and we don't get that conviction. And so it's, it's been a long time since I've dated, but people say it's like dating. You got to find the right chemistry and philosophy alignment, and it's got to be the right time, and they've got to be at the right stage in the deployment of capital within a fund. And so there's so many variables that need to line up in order for you to secure an investment. And we've had lots of incredible angels along the way, but probably about 40% of our investment came from folks who found our product out in the world, wrote us an email, and were like, "Who are you guys? What are you doing?" And ended up writing a check. And so just like we had a lot of serendipity in meeting Leslie at the park, our capital journey has been filled with equal serendipity of people who just, met us, saw the vision, loved the mission, and decided to get involved. And we're so grateful that it's happened that way, and continue to, work on closing our current round.
It's fascinating and also inspiring that so many people have found the product naturally or through, the park situation or whatever the case may be, and just bought in so heavily. I'm just curious about, these 3 exits that you were mentioning. Would they be an ideal person or method of funding for you?
Yeah, I after this, would I want to get involved in a chocolate company?
Very challenging.
I might want we joke that our next product won't be meltable.
Yeah, so, especially in Austin.
Yeah. So I don't know. We've met some of our predecessors in chocolate and have shared product and met the folks, and we never really try to sell involvement or investment, and feel that if it's meant to be, it'll be. And so while we'd love the, chocolate heroes of the past to see this as the next iteration of chocolate and jump on board, it hasn't happened yet, but they've all been super helpful in offering guidance and support along the way. But it might be they've just had too much chocolate to go back in. They're all doing other things today, non-chocolate related. So while it'd be super cool, it just hasn't happened yet.
I think it'll happen.
You think we'll get a chocolate hero?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
A chocolate hero. I like that. Yeah.
I think it's always timing, and like Jesse said, serendipity. We've met some of these folks along the way, and sometimes it's just, having those early stage conversations. But I feel like it's not something that can't happen.
Let's talk about marketing. Your product is absolutely stunning. I mean, if I saw it on the shelf, I mean, it would be the first thing that would capture my eyes for sure from a packaging perspective and that sort of thing. Did you have a marketing plan when you started the product? And did you know that it was going to look this beautiful? And how do you go about marketing it? I know social channels are big for you as well.
I think from the early days, we knew we wanted a brand that stood out on shelf, especially when you look at the shelf, right? Like, there's a lot of brands. How do you stand out to the consumer? So that was something that we really focused on in the early days. And Whims is actually a fun name because it's an unexpected surprise. And, that was part of the fun playfulness that we wanted to take this because, when you give somebody a chocolate and you're like, hey, this has 1 gram of sugar, it's gluten-free, dairy-free, it's plant-based, no sugar, alcohol, and palm oil. The early days when we did demos that way, people would be like, yeah, no, thank you. And they'd walk away. And so now we are like, would you like a chocolate? And they'd try it. And as they're eating it, you're like, oh, it's got only 1 gram of sugar. And they're like, what? How can this be? So it's that unexpected surprise that we always wanted to capture in the moment of someone being introduced to Whims and experiencing it for the first time. In terms of marketing, neither of us are marketing folks. And so we've kind of had to figure it out along the way of like what speaks to our consumer and what resonates with them. So social media has been really big for us. It's been something that we've been able to create, although it's probably still a struggle for me. It's hard to get onto social and just like talk to a screen. But I think the connection with other people and building that community has been so critical for us of people understanding the why of why we're here. And I think that's what people connect to more than just a product or, oh my gosh, it's another chocolate brand. Great. People connect to why are you building this? Who are you as a person, as a brand, as a community, and what are you about? And so those are the things that we've been focused on so far. And it's been really working to our advantage, I think.
Yeah, marketing has sort of two sides of the coin in our world. You have brand marketing, which is really about just getting your brand awareness to happen. And then you've got trade marketing, which is dollars spent in retail channels to discount your product. Ultimately, on sale moves units. And so you see that whenever you put your product on sale, your velocities and volumes go up. And so we've really focused our marketing to be sort of, in the early days, particularly doing so in a capital constraint way, we sort of said, well, unless there's an opportunity for conversion, we won't do it. And so any marketing we've done has been in support of selling our products. So we haven't really done brand marketing, although TikTok's done a great job of like getting the word out for us and has lots of potential for virality. But TikTok Shop is where you get that opportunity for conversion, which we do in the cooler months. We turn off all D2C stuff in the summer because the economics of shipping chocolate insulated, ice packed in 2 days they don't work. We know that we're probably underdeveloped in our marketing muscle in terms of how we think about truly marketing. And I think that, there'll come a time where we lean heavier into more traditional type marketing efforts outside of retail channels. But that'll happen.
Yeah.
TikTok, I mean, just random sidebar, but was that a concern? Because it's been a large channel for you when potentially it was going, leaving the States?
We launched right when they turned it off for a day.
Yeah.
So that was a long day. I think TikTok is too big of an economy to disappear. I think they've got some stuff to figure out, but it's an economy. I'm forgetting the stats now, but the number of small businesses that were operating on TikTok, the revenue dollars, it's its own economy now that in America, a lot of people are making money on TikTok. And so I don't know that you can just turn it off without really considering the impact it would have on people. Now they may, but and I think that probably you got to kind of pull up 30,000 feet from that and think about your channel mix. You have, certainly there's the risk of that channel evaporating overnight, but we've always been thoughtful about channel mix so that we de-risk having too much revenue focused in one area because anything can change. And so from day one, it's been a focus of ours to have multiple channels that we sell in our product, specifically our category product. It offers the opportunity to sell across lots of different channels and places. And so while we're limited in some way with like D2C in the summer, we're, the white space in food service and, corporate campuses, offices, coffee shops, smoothie bars, hotels, travel.
Yeah. I mean, I think we also want to connect to where consumers might be, right? Like, where are the places of discovery? It's not always just in retail, right? Yes, there's the D2C component, which is not always a reality for us, especially in the hot months. Like, we have to turn it off, like Jesse said. But where else can we find them? Where else can they discover our brands? We had somebody reach out. They're like, "Hey, I discovered you guys at the American Airlines lounges." We're like, "That's so cool. Take a photo for us." Like, every opportunity of food service is great. We're going to be in a few business and institution campuses. And so having people access our products at their place of work is so cool, right? And
it's just a beachhead for discovery.
Yeah. So yes, there's the channel mix strategy part, which I put on Jesse's head because he's very good at thinking about the strategic side of it. But it's like, where are we going to meet the people who's going to purchase our products possibly down the line, right?
Yeah, really, really smart idea there. I think partnerships probably play a huge role in that, right? Like I'm just thinking, from my own experience, if I see a healthy snack at like a spin studio or a gym or that sort of thing, you're more likely to engage with that. And you also know it's a bit curated, right? It's not just, they're not just putting anything, they're not putting the Snickers bar on the shelf, for example, right?
Yeah.
Circling back on the kind of the ICP conversation, but more so the why and the resonation between your story, Leanne, and people that are buying the product. Are you getting messages, or are you having conversations or starting conversations online with these individuals who came across your story and then the product as a consequence, or maybe had the product and then were so in love with it that looked deeper into it, found your story, et cetera? Are those people starting conversations with you?
Yeah, typically it starts from, there's the digital side of it, which is like where the social media helps us connect around, the globe. And so people are connecting, reaching out, saying, "Hey, how, I read your story. I'm also going through my own personal journey, whatever it might be." And I find that, in person, I'll meet founders or people along the way all the time, and they'll share and it's kind of like, I feel like it's so natural for females to do this. We just talk about this. Like, I will meet somebody and be like, "Okay, this is what's going on with my health. What's going on with yours?" It's just so natural to connect about that, about like what's real and what's happening personally, because that's how you kind of ideate, brainstorm, like, what else can I be doing? What are you doing that's working? And that's the community, I think, that we've created. We really enjoy that when people reach out and they're like, I have this diagnosis, this is what I've done. How do you cut sugar? Which is, by the way, the hardest thing in the world to do. So it's just always just talking through people's journeys. And it's oftentimes not even about the product, right? It's like, what are we doing for our whole, holistically in our lives to support us to get to wherever it is that we're looking to get to.
Yeah.
I'm always so surprised when I hear Leanne meet a woman who she's never met and the depth of conversation they go into at first meeting, and think, dudes, we just talk way more macro, politics, weather, sports, and women get right into the micro fast.
Yeah. What are your health markers?
Yeah,
tell me about when you had your last blood test done. And they're like, "Okay, let me tell you." Like, there is no resistance to that. And I think that's what's been great, is it's more than just selling chocolates. It's almost like resonating on the same wavelength about what's going on, and everybody's going through this journey, and sometimes it's so quiet, like it's so personal, so we keep it hidden. So it's nice to be able to share it with other people and be able to talk through it, really. Yeah.
Do you feel like that community piece was maybe a missing piece when you first got your diagnosis? And maybe you weren't actively looking, but I'm sure, just as being a founder is lonely, I'm sure receiving a diagnosis is lonely, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you're fostering this community via your product without even maybe, that being the primary intent?
I never thought about that, but the minute you said that, it was like, when I got my diagnosis, it's called lichen planus, okay? like in Plano Polaris or something like that, right? And I went on Google, all the Reddit channels, all the Instagram, looking for people who had this. And because only 1% of people with alopecia have this type of alopecia, it's a scarring alopecia, there were very few people. I went on like these groups where, you would do monthly calls, and it wasn't, very helpful. But I tried to connect with people one-on-one, and it was so difficult. It was so difficult, mainly because it's a hard journey to go through, especially as a woman when you're losing your hair. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to put it out in the forefront or be public about it. So I found that there was a lot of resistance, and I felt very lonely about, as I went through this journey by myself. I couldn't talk to my family about it. No one had it. And even trying to explain it to my family, it was really difficult for them to understand, like, how does your scalp hurt? It doesn't connect. So part of it is, yes, wanting to connect with other people who are at different points in their journey, to either just talk through it together, to know that there's somebody else out there that's going through the same experience. That's always been very important to me, because, going through it alone it's just so much harder. Not that you weren't there for me. He was great. Yeah, he was like the guy who set up our kitchen, and like for the first time when I had to shave my hair, and he got all the kids to come, stand in the kitchen, and they all shaved their head first, including my daughter, by the way. She had her head shaved for 2 years, and people would go up to her and say, "Hey, bud," and she was like, "They called me Buddy." I'm wearing like a dress and everything, and they'd call her like, "Hey, bud," and she was like, so offended. So, he really supported me through that time, and it was important.
You're absolutely right. Like, nobody can like perfectly relate to something that they haven't experienced, right? They can be sympathetic or empathetic, but not perfectly relate.
Yeah.
So that's so important. Yeah. Regarding being a couple and also co-founders, this is something that we're always we're always curious about. And how have you managed? Obviously, you work together daily. You also have a family together. How do you manage that relationship? And are there boundaries and that sort of thing that you put in place to ensure that both your personal lives and your professional lives or your business are successful?
It's not a trick question.
Okay. Safe space.
Safe space, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Leanne and I have been together for 29 years, and we've been married for 23.
Yes.
23.
Just happened. Yeah.
23rd anniversary.
Yeah.
And we talk about it like,
Thank you.
We talk about it like we're on our third marriage. We've never gotten divorced.
He talks about it as if we're in our third marriage.
I heard Esther Perel once say that most people in their lives will have 2 to 3 marriages, and if you're lucky, it'll be with the same person. When I think back on our journey of our relationship, we've, had to really, and I think about that like, we've had to recreate our marriage, as one day you wake up and it's like, you're not in the marriage you want. You're in the marriage you have, that you've defaulted into. And so you got to get together and talk about that and work through it and recreate it, right? And so I think this, working together comes at a time where we've spent so much time working on our relationship as a couple, that this is just a new dimension to do more work together on. And so, there's nothing we don't talk about as a couple and aren't honest with each other about. And so that gives a pretty good framework to navigate anything that comes up, whether it's 9 o'clock at night and I'm brushing my teeth and Leanne's like, "Oh, did you send that email?" And I just look at her like, "Don't ask me now," right?
It's too late. Tomorrow.
Yeah. So, we're pretty good about just having really open communication about boundaries, and sometimes we'll choose to like have conversations at times, and sometimes we'll choose not to. And it's never perfect, but it's a continual journey of trying to figure it out together, of how are we at this moment in our marriage, in our business partnership, and continuing to find each other wherever we happen to be on that journey in that moment, whatever we're going through. Sometimes we'll just hold each other and cry in the kitchen because it's really fucking tough. And other times we'll high five each other and celebrate a big win. And what's really cool, I think, for me, is, having a partner who I love and trust and care about so much in the office next door, and feeling like so good about whatever it is that Leanne's working. And I've never worked with somebody like Leanne, who you can like point at any problem, no matter how complicated or hard, and she figures it out. And so that the value from a partnership perspective that I have, and the trust and confidence I have in Leanne as a business partner is like unmatched. It's awesome.
That's great. So nice. Now I can't say anything. I'm joking. I was just going to add to our boundaries, though. It's like we don't have any set rules around what boundaries has to exist in our relationship, whether personally or at work. We kind of just like let it iterate as needed, as whatever is needed in that moment, right? And it's our responsibility to communicate what our needs are if it's changing, right? And I think that's been Jesse's he's a strong communicator. Like he just is. And for me, I've had to develop that over time. Otherwise, I can tend to just like let things happen, right? Regardless of what I want in that moment. And so being able to, we've talked about it as in, we really need to be responsible for ourselves of what we need and vocalizing that in any moment. So if it's like the 9 p.m., oh my gosh, Jesse, I need to talk to you about this. He's like, no, then I have to like understand, okay, yeah, this might be a bit much. But I do love that we don't have rules, like there is no established rules about how we should do this. Whether it's our marriage, it's work, it's kind of nice, that there's no rules. It
helps also that Leanne's incredibly patient. That helps.
He says that I'm patient. So Jesse and I get to play to each other's strengths, which is the perfect, I couldn't ask for a better partner, especially in what we're doing every day. Like, I think we complement each other so well. And sometimes when we're doing something where we're like, oh, this is not our strength, we'll tag each other in. And that's been a lot of fun that we can do that.
You're mentioning there's no rules. And I think that only works when communication is so strong, right? Otherwise, there have to be significant boundaries that are put into place. But it's so awesome. And I truly think, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of these conversations. And the whether it be couple-based or not, co-founders, the biggest thing is communication. If you have strong communication, you can do anything. So it's beautiful to hear that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Jesse, I've been thinking about something that you said very early on the conversation, which is you came to a crossroads in your previous career, if you will, where you were like, is this gonna be what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life? And so I'm curious. This is a question for both of you. What aspects of your previous careers and jobs and that sort of thing have set you up for being a founder today?
Yeah, I had an amazing experience in my first career where I started off in recruiting and then did executive search and then exec coaching, leadership development, and then some HR work where I had a seat at the table in and amongst maybe for sure dozens, maybe hundreds of companies, and interviewed for sure hundreds, maybe thousands of execs and people about their jobs. And so I think, one of the things you said when we started today was this conversation would be led by curiosity. And that was my first half of my career. Was everything I did, I had to lead through curiosity to learn. I started off as a tech recruiter without any technical knowledge. So I had to learn what all the acronyms in software development were, not having any background or experience in it. And at a time where the internet wasn't what it is today. So, I think that getting to work alongside so many incredible entrepreneurs, very talented executives and leaders across so many different functions in a number of different industries, lots in consumer, having worked with founders, private equity groups who had consumer investments, and I would work within their portfolio companies, and then working for one of the largest food companies in North America with their executive team on some of their investee companies or portfolio companies. And so I think I sort of had a good firsthand seat at the table experience that I draw on every day within our business today. And having said that, what I'm always amazed at, as even though coming into this I had that background of sort of first person experience, how different this is, and realizing that everything I did there set me up for the learning journey I'm on today. Never having done this in this moment with this team at this time with this product. So there's so much newness. So a lot of familiarity, but still just an absolute ton of learning. And so I think I pulled that same sort of curiosity into my world today, to where anybody we hire, partners, vendors, our teammates, investors, I still think about it like, what is there for me to learn in this moment, and bring that in. And I think you got to stay curious, have a point of view for sure, but know that your point of view isn't the truth. It's a point of view. And then learning about other points of view to stand in and see what you can discover there. And so I think, like, I feel so grateful for that early career, to where I got to see so many different things.
That is one of his, I don't know, it's like his superpowers, Jesse, is, we can be looking at, hey, how do we do supply inventory management in the CPG world? And Jesse will talk to 100 people and just interview them, and then he will like build in that base of knowledge, and he's like, okay, we take all of this information and now like translate that into what do we need at Whims, why are we different, and like how does it play into our organization, and then figure out of, okay, this is I think how we're gonna set it up for us so that it's gonna work. So Jesse's like, that is it. You just got to let him go. The minute he's got his eye set on something, he's got to figure it out, and then he'll come back with, okay, this is the game plan. So he's been really good at that.
And then what Leanne's superpower is slowing us down and figuring out the details.
That doesn't sound good.
No, it's
she
so
hits the brakes.
good. No, it's amazing, because I will leap first and look second, and that's not good. So Leanne's incredible at getting into the details of how we actually going to execute this. Like, everything we've truly executed has been out of Leanne's horsepower to really slow down, get into the details, figure out the systems, the structure, the process, the people. I mean, you're like, I can throw an idea over the fence that Leanne knows nothing about, and you just figure it out and get into it at a level that I got to be on to the next.
He's got to go. He's got to go now.
My ADHD is pulling me somewhere new now. And
all I want to do is rein him in,
Yeah.
But I think that's where my previous experience really came in, which never, in my mind, I never thought, hey, this is going to translate well into running a chocolate business. I never had it in my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. Jesse always was that. And so it just made sense. But I worked in HR, people operations, setting up global teams around the world. And so a lot of it is with startups and building infrastructure and figuring out, like, how are we going to do this? Oh, we want to set up an entity in France. How are we going to do that? We need a team in Hong Kong to execute this. Okay, how are we going to do that? And not knowing the answer is kind of the thing that gets me super motivated every day. When it's something that's just like a plug and play, I get less excited. But the minute you set me on, okay, this is a thing, we got to do this, we have no idea how we're going to do this, that's kind of where I want to lean in,
Leanne's got such a high tolerance for ambiguity.
And I love it.
So crazy.
I love the way that was worded.
Yeah.
Well, because I live with him. So it's like years of training. How long have we been together? 29 years. So you got to figure out, like, what is he saying? What does this mean? How are we going to do this? We've moved, from Toronto to Vancouver on a whim, literally. And then from Vancouver to LA and now to Austin. And a lot of it was very short. We made a decision, and then we got to go. We got to figure out how to get ourselves across the border from Canada to the US. How are we going to set up this entity in the US? Like, I think part of that has been fun. It's adventure to me.
So somebody who's driven by not knowing the answer, And the other who's driven by curiosity. I mean, you can't go wrong, right?
If I really need an answer, I'll go to him.
Yeah. Awesome.
But I prefer no answers. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I like that approach. What's next? What's coming down the pipeline for both of you and Whims Delight?
Okay, I have dreams about Whims, and like the things for Whims. Yes, there's like the pieces of we want to grow, we want to get in front of more consumers. We've spent the last few years kind of working on, growing slowly and being intentional, going into stores that we can go and do demos in, right? To now we're in regional chains that are anywhere between 50 to 250 stores. Harder to do that at scale. But I think overall, if I were like to step back and talk about like what's next for Whims, is like our vision is to recreate all of those nostalgic chocolates. So like if you think about those things, I'll always go back to snacks, guys. Like if we can recreate a few of them, and one of them, like this is top of mind, but I don't know. Am I allowed to share it? What do you think? Okay, no. I'll keep it a secret. But that one, if we knocked it out of the park, I think would be just incredible. And so there's a few things that I think we really want to do and be creative around. Right now, we've been kind of like growing with intention, but there's like this opportunity that given the right time, and I think we can really execute well. And I know that gave you nothing because I didn't say anything specific.
It got me excited, so that's okay.
I'm so excited that you're excited because I'm really excited for it.
There's two things we can share. One is like, we're in a moment of acceleration now, for sure. So things are starting to move faster. Opportunities are starting to show up for us. We're getting a lot of momentum. The flywheel's really starting to spin. And the other is really impact. As we look, we calculated that up until June, so in the first 2.5 years of our business, we've pulled 25,000 pounds of sugar out of the American diet. So the ability to accelerate our business, it directly relates to our mission of reducing sugar consumption. And the goal is 1 million pounds of sugar pulled out of the American diet. And
by 2030.
By 2030. So we've got some work to do. And, so it's cool to be in a moment where things are accelerating and, watching that number grow and just knowing the impact that has. I mean, that for us is like, that's our North Star. That's what drives all of our decisions. And so how do you do that? It's, expanded product line. It's looking at, it's no secret the top 10 selling confectioners in the US all need this same sort of level of innovation. And so we think of it like we earn the right to bring new products to market as we build out bigger distribution, and all that just continues to accelerate that flywheel of more products, bigger business, more impact.
It's so exciting. That's an awesome goal. 1 million pounds.
Yeah.
1 million
pounds. And you're at 25K.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's actually 26,000 pounds now. Yeah.
There you go.
I calculate it recently.
There we go.
Yeah.
So we got 4 years.
Yeah.
See the details.
Where can we send people to follow along, to check out the product, buy the product, follow along what's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, we've got a store locator on our website. And what's really cool is that store locator is full of independent small businesses all over the US. And so supporting us there supports them. And those are our partners in this mission. And so lots of stores across the country carrying our product. And we'll be back on our website at the beginning of September. The beginning of October. Once the weather cools down, we'll start shipping on our .com again, and then follow us on social, hit us up, shout us out, say hello.
Or find us here in Austin.
Come visit us in Austin.
Yeah, come visit us in Austin.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. Any plans to ship to Canada?
We do have one distributor in Vancouver, Vegan Supply. You got to check them out. But we aren't yet broadly sold across Canada. One day soon.
We sweeten our products with monk fruit. And in Canada, monk fruit is approved for the last 10 years as a tabletop sweetener. So you can go to Whole Foods in Canada and buy a bag of monk fruit and use it in your home baking. But it's not approved as an ingredient for manufacturing, strangely.
Sounds like a lot of red tape. That makes no sense.
Health Canada.
Yeah.
Write your MP.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah. All of the Canadian listeners right now, we'll get them to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need a monk fruit lobby.
I know.
Perfect. We're on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jesse and Leanne, thank you so much for this conversation. It was an honor to chat with you both and learn more about the business and everything that you're doing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for doing this.
You.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.